The first thing that I want to talk about is who and what I am and what it is that I do. My name is Russell the Magnificent. That's my professional name. And I am a lifer board preparation specialist. My job is to come in and to prepare a lifer who is up for parole for the board. So I'm not here to condemn him. I am not here to defend him. And I'm also not here to befriend him. I am here to prepare him. Now, in that exercise, it gets a little intense. Lifer board preparation is not like anything else. Lifer board preparation gets down into the nitty gritty. What I'm looking for and my aim, by training, I am a forensic analyst. And so what I'll do is I'll take a person's file, which sometimes is, very, very high, it's very large. My job is to go through the file, not to look for, salacious information or incriminating information or secretive information. My objective in going into an inmate's file is to search for something very specific. And what it is that I'm searching for is referred to as an event horizon. In other words, I'm not looking for the underlying causative effects of your crime per se. I'm looking for the underlying causative factors of the trajectory of your entire living experience, including the criminal behavior. Right? I want to know how that happened. But in order to do that, I have to go back to origins. Understand that when a guy like me goes to work, it's never because the person was guilty of some simple crime, some, common crime. Whenever I go to work, it's because the crime that was committed was heinous, right? Despicable, unspeakable, but a long time ago. So we're talking 50, 40, 30, 20 years ago. The exercise of a board hearing is not to retry the case. And so it's not an issue of defending the record, right? We are assuming if you are coming to the board and you have been down 50, 40, 30, 20 years, we are assuming that everything in that file is correct. In fact, before the board hearing will begin, they will inform you that we are accepting everything in this file as being correct. Right? Now, you do have the ability to correct, clarify the record. Maybe you misspoke previously. Maybe you misremembered something. And so, yes, you need to take the opportunity to correct and clarify the record. But for the most part, this right here will be accepted as true about you. The problem is that most inmates never read their own file. And so the way they present themselves is one way, and the way one would read them is something completely different. So when you finish reading the file and then you look at this inmate, in some cases, it's not even the same person, which is not a bad thing. In some cases, it's exactly the same person, which is a bad thing, right? So I want you to understand what it is that what I do, what I don't do, what my thing is. The reason why I have to go so deeply into the file, into family of origin, into family setup and all of that, is because I'm looking for something very specific. I'm looking for something different than what the opposition is looking for. Now, understand, everybody in the boardroom is going to have a copy of your file. The problem is you have to know what's in your file, because if you don't, you're going to get hammered and you're going to get caught off guard and you're going to be blindsided in the boardroom, in which case it's not going to be good and you're going to be sent back to your cell, perhaps for 15 more years. So the stakes are very high here, right? So I want to encourage anybody who's going before the board. I'm speaking to Harvard right now because I've been retained by an anonymous member of the Harvard Alumni Association to carry out this task. Of course, this will be the foundation for a documentary that will be produced based on this. My job is to bring Harvard University, the academic community, face to face with the case against it, right? Now, not the legal case. The legal case is the least of Harvard's concerns, right? Some money can take care of that. Some, corrective actions can simply take care of the lawsuit. I'm talking about Lanier versus Harvard, the one that Ben Crump has filed on behalf of Miss Tamara Lanier regarding the daguerreotypes and all of that. I'm talking about that. My job is to delve into not all the stuff that happened, all the stuff that's in the record. My job is to bring you face to face with the core ideology, is to see where you stand on the core ideology today. Now, of course, a parole hearing has very little to do with the crimes that were committed. A parole hearing has more to do with where your head is on that issue today. Where do you stand on the issue today? How do you feel about the issue today? Do you feel the same way about what you did 50 years ago today? Is your 20-year-old analysis of the reasoning and the context in which you did what you did, that heinous crime or heinous crimes, right? How does that, or how do you feel about all of that today? Because the way you feel about all of that today, the way you think about all of that today, the way you process all of that today will determine whether or not you'll be able to continue in the way that you would like to be able to continue. In the case of a lifer, it's because you were granted parole and you go on to freedom. In the case of Harvard, it's a little different. I want to, at this point, sensitize the entire Harvard academic community to what is at stake. Now, if I were having this conversation with a lifer inmate, I'd have to say to him, what you need to understand is that if you go into this boardroom and you are not prepared and you get blindsided, they are going to deny you 15 years. You know that? Do you understand that? Right? Are you aware? Right? So the stakes are high. The stakes are high. You can't go in. So a lot of them, you know what a lot of inmates do, right? A lot of inmates just don't go. They say, you know what, I got a 115. I got in trouble a couple of years ago. I probably don't have enough clean time. If I, go to the board right now, they're sure to deny me 15 years. So I'm not even going to go, right? And so, they opt out before the opportunity even comes. And so for many cases, you look at the statistics, the amount of board hearings that are scheduled and the amount of board hearings that are actually held, it's a huge, huge difference, right? Because inmates are just afraid to approach the issue, right? My job is to make sure that you're not afraid. My job is to make sure that you confront the issues and that you confront the issues against you. When it comes to Harvard, the stakes are different. You don't have to worry about having to spend the rest of your life in a cell, as it were. But what will happen to Harvard University is the same thing that will happen, that happened previously to the University of Ingolstadt in Europe. Remember that one from the Middle Ages, the one that was very controversial at the time of Galileo? Remember Professors Locher and Scheiner came out in defense of the orthodoxy, the establishment, and they came out against Galileo. That was a mistake. Because when you are committed to orthodoxy, when you are committed to the ideology at a time of great academic upheaval and at a time of great academic revelation, it is not the time to stick to the party line. You might want to open yourself up and open your mind a little bit and see what the new revelation is. As it turns out, the geocentric reality, as it were, turned out not to be so real. And the problem for the university, of course, is that the school of cosmology, or the branch of the university that was involved in propagating this notion of the or rather the geocentric reality, the Earth being in the middle of the universe, it impugned the integrity, the academic integrity of the entire institution. Right? So if you're at that school and you are at the School of Medicine, or say you're studying architecture, but when you graduate, they confer upon you a degree that essentially asserts that you have been indoctrinated into the understanding that the Earth is in the middle of the universe. And so when you cross the stage there, yes, the Earth is in the middle of the universe. Yes, come along. The Earth is in the middle of the, come along. Go out and do your thing, but the Earth is in the middle of the universe, yes. Well, it turns out that was wrong. And at the time of Galileo, it's not a good time to be doubling down on the geocentric reality, right? It's not the time. What eventually happened is that it became a disgrace. You have the University, think about this, of Ingolstadt, the Harvard of Europe, right? Holding fast to orthodoxy at a time of academic revelation. It got to the point where the children in the city of Ingolstadt would scorn and ridicule newly arrived students, because the children of Ingolstadt had been made aware of Galileo's discovery, which was a confirmation, of course, of Copernicus and his discovery, that the Earth was not in the middle of the universe, but in fact the sun was in the middle of the universe. Well, when it got to the point where the children of Ingolstadt were able to explain the heliocentric reality better than the professors, the highly respected and credentialed professors, could explain the the geocentric supposed reality, it was over. It was over. It was over, right? Students didn't want to go there anymore, right? Because the degree, it didn't matter what they went there to study anymore. The degree now essentially said, when you announced where you got your degree from, it essentially said you believe that the Earth is in the middle of the universe. And not only do you believe it, your university still believes it and still teaches it, and has lost all credibility because of it, thinking that at some point the world, that God, as it were, was going to redeem the idea that the Earth was in the middle of the universe. They're still waiting for that redemption. Shiner and Locher died in obscurity, still believing that the Earth was in the middle of the universe. The University of Ingolstadt ceased to exist, right? People didn't want to go there anymore. The degrees were discredited, right? That's what happens when a university. So we've seen this kind of universal board, of academia, if you could call it that, where things are just played out before humanity. Humanity was interested in whether the sun or the Earth was in the middle of the universe. It was a human issue. It was a human academic issue. Harvard is faced with the same dynamic today. One more example I would like to use, because as I was going through your file, things popped up. I'm a lifelong learner. I'm a lifelong student of human history. And one more thing really stood out as it related to Harvard in this particular situation that it finds itself in. And that was what I read about the Titanic. Right? Very interesting. Turns out the Titanic was designed to deal with and to handle a frontal impact. So that had the captain been advised by those who had designed it that if you come across any icebergs, don't be afraid. You can go ahead and hit it. But remember, he had already navigated south. He had already gotten out of the way of, the huge icebergs, but this one was pretty big. The problem was he tried to avoid it. Civil engineers say now that the ship was engineered and designed to be able to handle a frontal impact, and that even if it was immovable, the vessel would have survived, which is the point. The captain did not understand, nor did he respect or trust the engineering of the vessel. And so he tried to steer it out of the way. And in so doing, he ended up cutting a hole in the hull of his ship, a hole that was fatal, right? In retrospect, he should have just kept straight ahead. My advice to Harvard and the administration is that you just come clean. You deal with it straight ahead. Don't try to avoid this issue, because you're going to cut a hole in the side of the ship and the whole thing is going down, right? My advice to you is that you keep that guy, John Stouffer, professor, you keep him off camera, right? That guy does you no favors, right? The idea that he would suggest that Mr. Renty and Miss Delia probably enjoyed having their pictures taken was offensive. His references to Miss Lanier, how she claims to be a descendant of the slaves. You better watch that slave word, Mr. Stauffer, Professor Stouffer. You better watch that slave word. They were enslaved Africans. And as a representative of an institution that's been accused of reprehensible crimes, let me, as a lifer board preparation specialist, let you know, the moment you start minimizing victims, you're fucking up. Do you understand that? Okay. The moment you start down minimizing and marginalizing victims, you're fucking up. You, Mr. Stouffer, Professor Stouffer, need to stay off the fucking camera. Okay? You're not doing Harvard any favors at all. All right? I want you to know that. What we're going to be dealing with here has everything to do with what you feel about that today. Now, I want you to understand something else about my personal expertise. The thing about me, the thing that I'm really, really good at. I'm really, really good at taking a deep dive into a person's bio. So I will read a person's C file, their central file, right? That's the file that has everything ever generated about that person in prison. My job is to go through it all, right? Psychological reports, all of it. The probation report, everything, right? Because I'm looking for something specific. And when I did that, I read your file. I want you to know that, right? I went through your file. I suggest you do the same thing, right? You got to go through your file. You have to know what's in your file. The person who assembled your file, the person who put your file together, was extremely thorough. He even talked about your crime partners, right? But we're not discussing your crime partners right now. Right now, we're all about where your head is on the issue. My suggestion is that you read your file. I read your file and I went right to the origin of it all. Took me some time. I had to do some research. But I found out that Harvard University was actually born into a dysfunctional family. Oh yes, it was a family that was dysfunctional. It was a family that had just experienced an extraordinary breakup. A family that was very angry, and a family that was extremely intolerant, right? Harvard was born into that family. The reason there is no mission statement for Harvard is that the statement was written by John Winthrop when they arrived. The mission was articulated by John Winthrop when they arrived. The statement was the college itself. So the college became an extension of the ideology that the Puritans, of whom John Winthrop was leader. And it's important to know the chronology of it all, right? Because I want you to understand. You need to go back into your file. The Puritans arrived in 1630. By 1636, they had a college. 1630, what that tells you about the Puritans, if you're in my business, what that tells you about the Puritans is that they were serious about education. They were serious about literacy. And if you do any research on the Puritans, you'll discover that the one thing you were not going to be as a Puritan child was illiterate. You were going to know how to read, you're going to know how to cipher, math, right? And you were going to learn some other stuff too. The thing about a Puritan education is that it just wasn't about reading, writing, and arithmetic. A Puritan education also included indoctrination, which also included the ideology. And the ideology is what I want to talk about today, because the ideology could be explained 384 years ago. The question about the ideology today is, where do you stand on it now? And the ideology it's really plain. It's in your file, right? The ideology, the Puritan ideology of cultural anonymity, replacing cultural accountability as the basis of the society, the multicultural society. Right? Cultural anonymity as the basis of multicultural society. Right? As opposed to cultural accountability as the basis of multicultural society. So because of the ideology of cultural anonymity, we get the principle or the paradigm of chess piece color designations as replacements for cultural identity. Essentially, the ideology is an ideology of culture erasure. Not only their own culture, but then they wanted to project anonymity onto other people, essentially redefining everyone, including themselves, based on unnatural classifications. Well, that has been the academic agenda of Harvard College and then university until this day. And from that, we get a line, a chain of events, a pattern that can be traced back to the ideology, a pattern which also includes the criminal behavior. The question before the world today is whether Harvard remains an unreasonable, if the agenda remains an unreasonable risk of danger to public safety, because it has been established that the Harvard academic agenda has been an unreasonable risk of danger to public safety. People have died because of that ideology. People have been experimented on because of that ideology. Right? So that ideology has to be revisited today. Again, it's not about how you felt about it 384 years ago. It's about where you stand on that thing today, right? And so we're going to be going into that. Let me just go ahead and give you the 5 steps right now that we're going to be getting into, because you may not really want to continue, right? Again, I'm really not with the bullshit, right? I'm not with that shit at all. First of all, I'm a penitentiary nigga myself, right? So I done seen it all from every direction, every perspective that you can imagine. I've seen it from. I've lived around it up close and personal, right? So it's very little bullshit that you can come with. I've seen gruesome crime up close and fucking personal, right? So, you know, it's at this point where I have to get real and raw with you, because somebody has to. Think of me as Sergeant Foley to Zach Mayo trying to become an officer. My job is not to befriend you, not to condemn you, not to defend you. My job is to prepare you, to get you ready. And I can't do that talking nice. So I don't, right? I don't talk nice. I'm good at what I do because I do what I do, and I do it in the way that I do it, right? So from this point forward, this exercise and what we talk about is going to be raw and uncut. It was really never intended to be presented to people outside of prison. I had no idea that Harvard University was guilty of despicable, horrendous, heinous crimes against humanity a long time ago. I had no idea, right? So the idea that I would be presenting this to you is already a shock to me. So, but I can't give you anything other than the real. So, There it is. All right, so let's go. Number one, the first step is coming clean. You got to come clean, right? You need to know the shit's over, bro, right? What happened? It happened, right? The idea that you'll be trying to hide from what the fuck happened is crazy. Come clean and have a disposition of coming clean, right? Really. Assume the open position in the hearing. Don't cross your arms. Don't roll your eyes, all of that. Open yourself up to everything that's about to happen, right? I think you'll find it therapeutic. Number two, you got to take that deep dive with me. Right? I'm going to take a deep dive because it's a part of my job. I got to get to where it is that I'm headed. I need the origins of it all. I need the seed that produced it all, right? But I need you to take that trip with me, right? Because I need you to see what it is that I'm seeing. I need you to interpret it from an outsider's point of view. Fish don't see the water, right? So here you are thinking that, the way you're presenting yourself is the way that you come across, and it's not, right? So you need to read your file. When you get to 9, we're going to be looking for the same thing. We're looking for the origins now. We're looking for that seed. We're looking for how is it that your life took that trajectory of all the things it could have done. Why that? We need to know that. The third thing is you want to ring the bell first, right? Whatever it is that is your issue, you don't want somebody to have to pry that out of you. You don't want the opposition to point that out to you, and then here you are, caught off guard, and you can't really handle it, and you don't know where that part is. You never read that before. No. You have to understand what the issues are so that you can ring the bell first. If the bell's gonna get rung, you might as well be the one who rings it. I'm just telling you, you might as well be the one who does it. Right? Don't let him do it. Right? Because if they ring the bell, listen, if you ring the bell first, you suck the air out of the room. You're expanding on what somebody else hopes to can you on. But you're expanding on it. That's what you want to do. You want to ring the bell first. The idea that you don't understand what's going on with you, the idea that you don't understand what you did and how you did it. Oh, no. Not only do I understand it, I'm ringing the bell first. All right? Very, very important. Number 4, you have to develop empathy. That's why you have to keep that guy, John Stouffer. You got to keep him off. He has no empathy. Those 3 women that were up there. I'm talking about that program that Harvard put up, talking about Harvard and slavery and all of that. That's their effort to address the issue and all. Those 3 women, you guys were fine. That guy, professor, the one who was representing the establishment, you got to keep that guy off camera because he has no empathy. He doesn't give a fuck about the victims. Oh my God. Bro, you are about to be responsible for the degrees at Harvard not meaning shit. You are not going to have to worry about the students fighting and fussing and fighting trying to get in. You guys are going to have to worry about the students fussing and fighting trying to get out. Okay? Enrollment's not going to be your problem in a minute. Disenrollment is going to be your problem in a minute. So, John Stouffer, keep your mouth shut about slaves and all that shit, bro, because you're not compassionate at all. You're not empathetic at all. And that attitude right there is going to get your university canned. You are the same as, what's his name? Christoph Scheiner, right? At the University of Ingolstadt. You're like him. Bro, you need to keep your mouth shut. You need to keep your mouth shut. Now, when it gets to the issue of deep empathy, this is not just any kind of empathy, right? This is deep empathy. This is empathy that goes into the humanization and the humanity of the people who were the victims. You have a responsibility as a perp to humanize your victims. That's right. That's right. You, under no circumstances should you ever refer to those people as slaves. Under no circumstance, enslaved Africans, yeah. Mr. Renty, Miss Delia, perhaps you ought to get somebody to Photoshop those daguerreotypes and put a suit on Mr. Renty and put a beautiful dress on Miss Delia and post those pictures up prominently where everybody has to pay respect to those 2 humans who were degraded the way Harvard has degraded them. Your attitude about the victims is all wrong. Okay, that's what's going to can you. Okay, that's what's going to get you. All right? So let's move on. Let's get to the next one. Number 5, which is, you have to have a different program, bro. You have to transform your agenda based on a full understanding of what you have done and what has occurred. You got to come with something new. Now, if you're not willing to do all the things we just talked about, you don't even need me. You need a fucking lawyer, okay? You don't need me. I'm here to get you ready for the board. Your lawyer is going to be upset at me for not getting you ready if you go in there and you're not able to handle this, the line of questioning or the issues that may come up. So I take this very seriously.